Okay, so this is gonna be a video talking about like some comments on social media. I wanted to talk about something that I thought was like very interesting. I wanted to make an interesting observation on it. So basically, Five Pillars is a UK Muslim like publication, and it reports on Muslim like interests, basically like things that Muslims in the UK would be interested in, as well as like some kind of like international Islamic news and stuff like that, right? So you basically get what you expect, right? And they're a pretty like standard normal Muslim organization. Like they have a YouTube channel. They have like I sometimes watch some of their like not much, but I sometimes like they have podcasts, right? And they showcase a very normal like Muslim view, right? Like just the normal view that people just like the normal way of approaching Islam that has always existed, right? So nothing like out of the ordinary, nothing crazy, right? And so they publish a lot of stuff. Sometimes about sexuality, though rarely, right? Obviously, that's not their focus because, as I said, they're a normal like Muslim group. They don't like post anything excessively, right? Just like it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's normal stuff. So anyway, they posted this tweet, right? And obviously, I know Twitter is a dumpster fire, and you expect these kind of comments, but I'm not talking about that. Like they made this tweet, right? And it's basically linking to the article, right? And I'm gonna guess like 100% of the people in the comments haven't read the article, but this view, um, practical guide for Muslims on how to navigate LGBTQ Pride Month. It's from like a very British perspective, right? Like what's happening in the UK, basically. Um, and it's like it showcases the normal, like this is literally the most normal, standard, ordinary Muslim view, right? It is what the vast majority of Muslims worldwide, and even at least the majority in Britain, believe about like certain kinds of sexual relationships, right? Like same-sex encounters and things like that, right? Um, and you see they're quoting the Quran, and it's a few verses, and anyway. So basically, the point is that they say experiencing same-sex attraction is not in itself considered sinful in Islamic theology, right? Okay. And it's like they're saying there's nothing wrong with actually being gay. It's like it's not sinful. It's not haram to just be like, a man attracted to men or a woman attracted to women or anything, or bisexual, or it's like it's whatever. Right? That's obviously not the concern. But they are representing the normal Muslim view, which is that, um basically that there's no such thing as ethical same-sex sexual activity, right? Sex can only exist can only exist within marriage, and marriage can only be between a man and a woman, or one man married to multiple women, basically, right? So that's just the normal. That what I described there is literally the only real Muslim view. So, you know, and amongst like Islamic scholars, that's universally the view. So that's it's not really much opposition to there. There's no like even when it comes to like queer Muslims and same sex attracted Muslims and even Muslims who are like pro LGBT and they believe that there's like that same sex intercourse could be halal. It's not like none of these people have really done much research on the topic, right? They haven't really like delved into it, like the theological sources, and it's not really they don't really articulate it much. They just say, well, there's nothing in the Quran explicitly prohibiting it, which is like, yeah, it's true. There's nothing explicitly, it never explicitly says, you can't, two people of the same sex can't, bone. But I think you're kind of missing the point, right? Obviously, it's inferring, and it's very good inferring, because what the Quran describes as like ethical and halal relationships and marriage, it only talks about those who can participate in such a phenomenon. It doesn't extend it to all people. So no, same-sex marriage is not legit, and therefore all same-sex intercourse, because all intercourse can only exist in marriage. No same-sex intercourse is legit, right? It's completely haram. All right, so that's basically all it's saying. It's just giving a normal Muslim view, and it's saying that because in Pride Month in June, especially in like the UK, there's so much like it's like taught in schools, LGBT plus curriculum stuff, and some other things. Like it's taught in school, it's taught in this, and it's taught in that. It's like, well, your kids might be influenced by it, and people become pressured to support. This kind of like every kind sexuality's fine. You can do it. That's not really how it is. It has to be restricted. That's because Allah knows best, right? And Allah determines what is and what isn't ethical conduct. But a law determines everything. So if a law would, if a law put in the Quran, if it was true, right, that even just same-sex attraction were haram, then it's haram and it shouldn't be held, right? It shouldn't be experienced. Obviously, a law is not against that, but I'm just saying, I'm talking about like hypothetically, right? So Allah knows best always, and that's you have to follow him above everyone else, right? So again, perfectly fine article, there's nothing wrong with it. Now you might be saying, well, why am I talking about this comment section, right? Like at first glance, this seems to just be the kind of thing you would expect. Like obviously, if you go to like normal Muslim articles, like even like innocent Muslim articles and stuff like that, you kind of like, get this kind of stuff, right? Obviously, like a bunch of mentally ill people who have nothing better to do than just harass Muslims online. You get what I'm saying? So you might think, well, this is like nothing new, right? And obviously I wasn't shocked. I was expecting this very comment section, right? But what is a bit more interesting than just like, okay, well, obviously there's a whole whole hornet's nest of mentally ill people, all the Islamophobes gathered. What is a bit more interesting is how commonly I see like one sentiment being showed, right? So here's this guy, right, saying like, maybe just leave, or why do you live in the West if you against LGBT people, or integrate? Islam is no place in the UK ever. The UK certainly isn't a place to you, like, and yada yada yada, and if you scroll down, you'll find like they're talking about the country, right? They're talking about the UK, right? Basically that's how it is, right? And just let's move in my position where I'm sitting on my chair. And that's basically like the most common sentiment I see. Yeah, you see, like they're saying like lead the country, right? And you get what I'm trying to say. And you just like, and they're trying to say, well, look at all these homo nationalists that would be born in, something to do with the West. And anyway, it's kind of boring. But anyway, I wanted to talk about this because I know I shouldn't take severely mentally ill and deranged people too seriously, but what if I did, right? Like, what if I were like to take this literally, right? What they're saying, right? Now, obviously, as we know, like the vast majority of Muslims in Britain are British born, as in like they're literally British, right? And the only citizenship they have is British citizenship. So they can't even go to any other country, even if they wanted to. Not that they do want to or they should or anything. They can do whatever they want. They can live wherever they want, right? Even if I didn't support open borders, I would still support them living in the UK because, why not, right? But I'm just saying, like, again, that most of these people are not immigrants. Like, most Muslims in the UK are not immigrants. In fact, a lot of them aren't even offspring of immigrants. Even their parents are born in the UK. It would apply to different European countries, right? Like, as to what percentage of Muslims in a certain like European country, immigrants versus like native born. It depends on the country, but the UK is the worst example they could have picked because they're overwhelmingly UK born, right? The Muslims who live there, right? And he will continue to live there, and so on. But I find this interesting because if we were to really take seriously what these people are saying, right? Like their sentiment, the stuff they're saying about like if you don't like a policy, then leave. Well, actually, this isn't even talking about policy. There's nothing in this article that even hints at whether something should be legal or not. It's just saying this is unethical. The Quran says otherwise. The Sunnah says otherwise. There are hadiths which hint at, like every description of, halal intercourse and halal marriages and relations and who can touch who and who can be in a relationship with you, right? It's always between, a man and a woman, right? Obviously. But nonetheless, right, what I'm about to say is you don't have to view it from a Muslim perspective. You don't have to view it from an anti-queer perspective. Not that I'm anti-queer. I wouldn't say, it would be misleading to say I'm pro-queer either. I'm just a normal Muslim. Like, there's nothing wrong with being gay, but, obviously some their relationships, really only a fraction of relationships worldwide are halal, right? I mean, it has to be between Muslims, right? Yeah, there has to be at least one Muslim involved, right? And yeah, it's only really, marriage should only really be amongst Muslims and following Sharia and following the principles. So really, almost all like sexual and romantic relationships are just not legit. And then there's like the fact that so many relationships, romantic sexual relationships, exist outside of marriage, which is also haram. So But here's the thing: you don't have to. You can view it from like the most queer perspective ever. You can view it from a secular perspective, or just any general like non-Muslim perspective. You don't have to like agree with me here, right? But what I think is interesting is how common this response of like go back to your country again. That this is their country; they're from the UK, but let's just say they are immigrants, and let's also say that we live in a perfect world where there's open borders, right? There's open borders, right? You can go to any country you want, right? So why in the world would someone go to a different country because the country they live in, the people there are pro LGBT, or there are people who get like there's lots of same sex marriages. Well, who cares? Like, certainly they don't. And I think it's weird because the implication here is that the people who care about what Muslims think are actually the people who are obsessed, not the Muslims themselves. Like, Muslims don't care. They're just sharing their opinion on, like, I just don't agree with homosexuality. I don't agree with, like, homosexual sex and relationships and stuff. Like, okay, sure. And also, that was, like, the majority view of Britain for, I don't want to say thousands of years, because thousands of years ago, it was like you have the different opinions, but hundreds of years ago, sure. And for hundreds of years, certainly. Like, homosexuality, even just the attraction, right? So, like, even less pro-queer than modern Muslims. Like, it was frowned upon intensely. It still is to an extent, and it shouldn't be, obviously, but it was intensely frowned upon for hundreds of years, right? And virtually everyone in Britain and surrounding European countries were, like, against it, right? Which I think is interesting. So the implication here is that if someone were gay or like really pro-gay, should they thus move away from a anti-gay country, like an anti-queer, anti-LGBT plus country? Should they not even legally be allowed to live there? Is that the implication? I don't even know. Well, neither do these people, but I'm just trying to figure it out, right? Like, well, maybe there's nothing to figure, but I don't know. But I was just thinking anyway, like, because we're on this topic. Well, I'm on this topic anyway. They won't dare to think about it. If you want Muslims to leave Britain, let's say they could, right? Because, they don't agree with this LGBT stuff, right? But the country agrees. Then would that mean that if, like, Britain became a Muslim majority country, I mean, every country in the world will eventually become Muslim majority, but, it probably not as fast as some of these people think, unfortunately. But, if it were to happen, right, which would be a great thing, right? Britain becoming Muslim majority and the whole world, would that mean that thus, like, all non-Muslims should leave because they don't believe in Islam? As well as the fact that if the majority of people in that country were to one day revert to, again, being against homosexuality, or in the case of Muslims, at least against homosexual acts, then, like, would that thus mean that everyone else who doesn't agree with this, who is pro-LGBT, should get kicked out of the country? Like, is that the implication? That's so weird because these people, like, fearmonger about, like, Muslims and like immigration from Muslim countries and like coming into the West and like repopulating in terms of theology. And so, like, if Europe becomes a Muslim majority continent, does that mean like all non-Muslims should be forced to leave it according to your own values and standards to be non-hypocritical? Like, is that the implication? Is that like, again, I know these people don't think and they don't know like the indications of their own words, and they don't put any effort into it. But again, I'm just saying, like, if we were to think of this literally, what do they literally believe, right? And so it's just weird, obviously. I mean, well, it goes without saying how weird it is, but it's like you don't like one policy or one opinion of the people, therefore you must leave the country. By this standard, you must leave every country. You must leave Earth. You got to become an astronaut and float in outer space. Like, there is no country in the world that has the policies or opinions of the people of anyone, like, at all. Like, holy shit. Like, none. It's the craziest thing. That is the craziest thing. That is insane. So it's like, if you don't like it, then leave. Again, let's just imagine they could do that. Let's imagine they go to any country they want, right? I don't think anyone would leave the United Kingdom literally just because people agree with same-sex marriage. That would be an insane thing. You would mock people for that. I would mock people for that. We should mock people for that. I mean, like, think what happened when Trump won the first election and the second, both times he got elected. There were maybe tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, Americans, right, who, suddenly got some visa and they immigrated to Canada or Mexico or just any other country, right? Any other country they could get citizenship in or like permanent residence or just get away, right? It's like that's obviously stupid because the policies haven't been put in yet. Although I do understand why. I mean, they're discussed an evil man. I 100% agree, right? Not wanting him in office. But it's like at least then there's like a bunch of policies and a bunch of opinions that'd be like, yeah, yeah, sure, sure. But this is literally on something as mundane and trivial as same-sex relationships. Like I don't like this is the ironic thing. Again, most Muslims do not care. Like these people do, right? And they think the Muslims care that much, right? But Muslims are literally just saying here, like, I just don't agree with it. Like, yeah, it's haram. You shouldn't do it. You should not stick your dick in someone with the same sex. Like, you should not have sex like that. Like, yeah, I mean, like, this is the same for all relationships between non-Muslims. All of that is haram, and all relationships outside of same-sex marriage. Like, so what is the implication that someone is allowed to live in this country, should be allowed to, should live in this country, but the moment their opinion changes on one issue that goes against the opinion of the majority and the governmental policies, they should thus immigrate out of it. So anyone who believes that sex outside of marriage is immoral, that, zina is bad, that sexual activity and sexual acts should be exclusively reserved for, between loving spouses consensually within marriage. Like anyone who suddenly takes up that opinion, they got to be exiled apparently, or they should self-exile or something. So before they had that opinion, perfectly fine. But the moment they admit that indeed the Prophet Muhammad, peace and Allah's blessings be upon him, did indeed see Jibril, saw an angel, encountered it, and that obviously happened, and duh, he wasn't lying, he wasn't mentally ill. I mean, these people are mentally ill, holy shit. But like, just that obvious reality happened, and there's no other realistic or any explanation outside of that. The moment they just admit that obvious truth, somehow they have to like get a bunch of like, they have to start filing like tax reports and immigration reports, and they got to get a bunch of paperwork done, and they got to figure out how to leave the country and go somewhere else to where other people believe that. But there's still the same amount of people believing it. So why would it matter where the geographical distribution is? You know what I mean? Like, this is also weird, like when people talk about like Muslim immigration, like Muslims moving places, like, but there's the same amount of Muslims worldwide. It's just where it's distributed. So what is your problem? This is what I mean. Like, if you don't like people believing in Islam because you're an idiot, and you don't like people believing in Islamic values, like, sex is only between a man and a woman. It can only happen in marriage, and marriage is only between a man and a woman, right? Like, just that basic stuff. Then, like, like, why would it matter where they live? Like, because the same amount of people live. Let's say someone is from like Pakistan, right? And then they immigrate to like, I don't know, like I don't know, just European, I don't know, France, right? Okay. Um, it's like, okay, well, they're a Muslim in Pakistan. They're a Muslim now in France. They're a French Muslim now. So they should go back to Pakistan, but they still exist either way, just in a different location. They still have the same beliefs, the same attitude toward, sexuality related topics, the same attitude toward theology, the same theological beliefs, the same, they still believe in Islam either way. So, like, how is this going to change anything? And why would you immigrate to a country on the basis of what people believe? Who does that? Like, no one. Like, no one moves to a country. Like, with the exception of the rarest instances ever, right? Like documented, like in documentaries, that's how rare it is, right? Or news articles, right? Because it has to be documented because of how rare it is. Someone actually like hating the beliefs of a certain country and that's like moving away. Like I remember there's like a video I saw on Twitter of like a Hispanic restaurant worker who decided he was there illegally, right? Because he was an immigrant from some Latin American country, I believe, and he was there illegally, right? And he decided to turn himself into ICE and just get deported, right? Basically self-deported at that point because he just didn't like how racist America was, and the Trumpists and the people that didn't want him there, like that's kind of messed up. I mean, well, it's extremely messed up that they didn't want him there, right? Because they're so racist. But but like I get why he feel. At least he feel. I understand like they hate his whole existence. But like holy shit. But anyway, the point is that's rare, and obviously the vast majority of Hispanic people in the United States, and even those here illegally, don't in fact self-deport on the basis of the racism of the people who hate mestizos and all that. Like Jesus, it's rare, right? So like, who in the world actually thinks and acts like this and like operates on that basis, on that behavior? It's so surreal. And so that's why. So in other words, this comment section is, yeah, it's like it's obviously bad, and I didn't expect it to be good, right? There's no obviously it goes without saying, but what makes it interesting is if you think about this like non-argument literally, like you think about like the implications of what they're saying literally, right? Like if you don't like it, then leave. Like imagine like you live in a country, right? Just any country. It could be a European country, it could be Arabian, it could be whatever. And it just happens to be the case that like your country has recently legalized recreational use of marijuana. You don't like it? Well, then you decide to move the move country to where it's illegal. Like imagine telling your family you're moving country because they changed the law around cannabis. You would understand that they would look at you like you have like five heads. That's insane. Like, do you like? I don't think the people make. I mean, obviously, I know the people making these comments don't understand how insane they are, like how far gone they are. But, but yeah, that would obviously be insane, right? And imagine the attitudes. I mean, that we don't even need to imagine the attitudes towards like recreational use of cannabis changes all the time, according to polls and surveys, right? Like every few years, right? Countries go in and out between being majority in favor of ethical, like, oh well, is it ethical to smoke weed? Should we allow it? Should we criminalize? Should we legalize? So like, would people be moving countries every few years because the opinions of the people change? So the moment like 49% of people approve of homosexual conduct, it's like we gotta, it's okay to live in the country. But the moment 51% of people approve of it, um, then you gotta leave. Apparently, like again, I'm putting probably way too much thought in it, but I think that's because the people making these comments put no thought into anything that they've said.